Hey everyone, it's Jackie from Vegan Yack Attack, and I'm back with a new recipe for you. Today's recipe is Carrot Top Herb Cornbread. Now, you may be thinking, what the hell is that? Well, it's what it sounds like. So I have from my CSA, which is a community supported agriculture box, a bunch of carrot greens and very few carrots, and also a bunch of carrot greens from my garden. I know that firstly, some people don't know that these are edible. They very much are. And some people just don't know what to do with them. I know when I first started cooking, I would just saute them up, and that's fine. If you're intrigued by what the flavor of Carrot Tops is, it's very, very similar to parsley, but it's a little bit more coarse in texture. The leaf is a little thicker, and it has this kind of like fine fuzziness on the stems of it. But if you smell it, it smells a bit like flat leaf parsley. So I thought a maybe slightly inventive and new way to use this would be to bake it with a couple other herbs and to give some tips in terms of some of the fresh ingredients that are in this recipe, which I think only the herbs are the fresh ingredients in this recipe. So we have those carrot tops. We'll prep those in a bit. The rest of these are just flours. I have some flaxseed and oils and sweeteners and stuff. All of this is very pantry friendly. And if you don't know what I mean by pantry friendly, I mean ingredients that you can buy if you don't already have it, and they are shelf stable or will last a very long time in your pantry or maybe even in your freezer. Like I like storing flax seeds in the freezer so that they don't go rancid because they're a bit fatty. And then the rest of it, like this fresh rosemary, the green onion, and then the carrot tops is pretty much low waste, or you can regrow them. This rosemary actually comes from a plant in my garden where I just pulled this off, pulled some of the leaves off the bottom, and then rooted it in a jar of water and then planted it, and now it's a huge bush. So that's kind of amazing. And as you may already know, this I regrew from green onions that I bought from the store, and then I just plugged it into the garden as well, but you can just keep it in a glass of water and they grow pretty much fine with a little bit of sunlight in there. So let me take you through how we're gonna do this. Very easy. We're gonna mix the dry ingredients and then add the wet stuff in, then fold in some of the herbs and bake it. It is as easy as that. Let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 375. If you see my oven, it doesn't say that, but I have a thermometer inside the oven, which is the right temperature. So if you rent or something like that and you're not sure about the temperature of your oven, it's very important that you buy a thermometer for the inside, because mine is about 10 to 15 degrees off, which is kind of huge. And then what else you're gonna need is a 9-inch skillet. A 9-inch round cake pan will also work. Just make sure you check on the cooking times because they may differ a little bit. This is a bit thick, cake pan's a little thin. So that's what I got going here, that 9-inch skillet and the oven preheating. Now, we're going to whisk together the dry ingredients. I have some cornmeal here, put that in there. And then I have a little bit of gluten-free flour. You can also use the same amount of all-purpose flour, or even like maybe whole wheat pastry flour if you have that. That's a little bit finer whole wheat powder or flour. So I'm just gonna put that in there as well. And then to help bind it a little bit, I have some ground flaxseed. In this case, golden, but regular is fine. And then I have some baking powder and salt. Just put that in there. Then we'll whisk that up first. Make sure that there's no clumps in it. That looks nice and combined. Okay. I'll get rid of some of these bowls. Now, before I actually add in the wet stuff, I'm going to prep these ingredients. Just wanted to kind of show you what to do with these carrot tops. So here, Like I said, these stems are very coarse. We don't really want that in there because I feel like it'll give us a weird texture. So I'm gonna pull some of these leaves off. You could probably even use a fork to do this, but honestly, this is fine and it is still pretty quick. And we're gonna need about a 1/4 cup chopped. So that might be a 1/2 cup before we chop it. So I'm gonna eyeball this just a little bit. And like I said, this has a kind of parsley aroma and flavor, but the texture is a little bit more coarse. So here we go. This will help get rid of a little bit at least. I have some other ideas for using carrot tops in the blog post for this recipe, so make sure you check the link in the description. If you have a ton of carrot tops like me, it'll give you some inspiration for how to use it outside of this cornbread. All right, I'm gonna just compost these carrot tops. And here, we're gonna mince it pretty finely, even though it'll cook a bit in the cornbread while it's baking. Just make sure you watch your fingers. Maybe clear your cutting board before you start chopping. That could be smart, couldn't it? All right, so this looks like it's closer to maybe a 1/3 cup. I might not use all of that. And then we're gonna do the same with rosemary. I already rinsed this off. Actually, I love rosemary because I just hold the top and pull the bottom to get those leaves off. Super easy to prep. And actually, I have a great rosemary salt recipe in a DIY gift guide on my site, so I'm gonna link that in the description as well if you have a bounty of rosemary like I do. So I'm gonna mince this because this again is another kind of coarse herb. We don't wanna be chomping on huge chunks of this stuff. Could be unpleasant. We're gonna need roughly a tablespoon of this minced, which I feel like this is about it. So if you're going to the grocery store and you don't have rosemary on hand, basically 1 big sprig or 2 of the smaller ones that they sell will be about a tablespoon. And if you are not going to the store, you're not gonna bother, 1 teaspoon of dried rosemary is equal to 1 tablespoon of fresh rosemary. And here we have, the green onion. Jeez, I can't believe how big this thing got. Okay. I'm not even gonna cut up all of that. That's kind of wild, maybe. So basically 1 green onion. And then we'll just mince this. If you don't have any green onions on hand, I would use maybe a 1/2 teaspoon or a teaspoon of onion powder just to get a little bit of that flavor. I love onions, man. So we'll do this. I might put more, or I'll just garnish it. I haven't decided. But we want a couple tablespoons of this. You know, maybe we will chop the other one. Get rid of it. I like trimming those dried ends off. So when you plant it, you want to save this part and down with the roots, and then that's what you're going to put in water to regrow it. Okay, so that's almost a 1/4 cup or like 3 tablespoons of green onion. Just kind of do it based on your flavor profile or what you're into. Let me get rid of these scraps here and I'll be right back. We'll make a well in the dry ingredients. So we can just dump these right in here. First, I have some non-dairy milk, some plain unsweetened. I don't want to throw any other flavors in there. Put that in. I then have some, here, let's see. I have some mildly flavored oil. So in this case, I used organic canola oil. You could also use grapeseed oil. Olive oil will probably also work. I've used melted coconut oil in place of this before for cornbread and it turned out fine. But canola, I feel like, doesn't have a lot of flavor to change the flavor of the cornbread. Okay. And then I have agave. You could probably use maple syrup as well, maybe a little less because the flavor is stronger than agave in my opinion. And you could also use granulated sugar, but you might need just a tad more water to get this dough wet enough. And if you don't like your cornbread with any sweetness at all, just lessen this a little bit. Maybe do a 1/4 cup or 3 tablespoons or something. And lastly, we have a little bit of water. So we're gonna mix that before we add the herbs in. Just fold that together. Until it's combined. It's gonna seem pretty wet right now, especially because I'm using gluten-free flour in here. And sometimes that takes a moment to thicken up, not quite like gluten-full flour. I'm actually gonna whisk this. There we go. Much nicer. Make sure not to whisk it too much because then you'll mess with the baking powder and it may not rise as much. Now we'll fold in all of these wonderful herbaceous flavors. Okay, and if you don't have access to some of these, I feel like dried basil would also work really well in here. I'm honestly shocked that I'm not using like frozen corn or something. I love corn in my cornbread, but I know that that's blasphemous to some people, but we'll all survive, right? You do you. I'll do corn in my cornbread, except for this version. Ooh. Already smells so good. So now we'll transfer this to the skillet. And if you have a skillet, you want to make sure it's oven safe if it's not in a cast iron skillet specifically. Pour that in. Ooh, love the color in this. You could also make this into muffins. It's just gonna have a different baking time. Probably be like 18 to 20 minutes, maybe even a little less depending on the size of the muffins. Now we're set to go in the oven. Let's put it in here for about 22 minutes. Now, it's been actually about 25 minutes. Ooh, look at this. So you see around the edges, it's gotten nice and golden. Here it's matte, and I did a toothpick poke and draw test, and it came out clean and dry. Now, don't hate me, but we're gonna have to wait probably 15 to 20 minutes before cutting into this, putting a little vegan butter on it or eating with some soup or anything. So I'm gonna let this set before showing you what the inside looks like. I think it may be time to give this cornbread a try. It still is very warm, but maybe you can see this. I'll take my decorative rosemary off. When it cools, it starts pulling away from the edge. So not only will it be more solid when you're cutting it apart when it's cooler, it will be easier to get out of your skillet, actually. Fingers crossed that this does that because it is still pretty warm. I'll cut a little slice out of here. Ooh, it's nice and moist. Just a reminder, if you use gluten-full flour for this, the texture will be a little different, so it may stick together a teeny bit better. I used a homemade blend. Firstly, this is already a great time. But I used a homemade blend of oat flour, brown rice flour, and then a little tapioca starch so that it bound together a little better. So you can always do that if you don't have like an all-purpose gluten-free flour on hand. Oops, I want to get this out, but I don't want to break it. Look at that little cutie. Aww, so cute. Okay, here now I'm gonna get that out of there. See how cleanly that came out? That's very nice. You could probably even use a smaller skillet than a 9-inch for this. You just will have to bake it longer, so maybe like a half hour or so. Again, do the drawn toothpick test to see if it's still wet in the middle. Now, I'm gonna put a little, butter. There we go. A little vegan butter on this. Ooh, melting so nicely. Oh my gosh. I'm salivating. Haven't eaten dinner yet, and it is definitely dinner time. Why do I do this to myself? All right, while that's melting, let's give this, ooh, you see that texture? It's nice. So good. And the herb flavors are there, but they're not like overpowering. Still definitely tastes like cornbread. Not too dense. Oh man, this will be perfect with some vegan chili. And actually, I'll link to a couple chili recipes, my favorite being my slow cooker potato curry chili recipe. I'll link to that in the description because that would be wonderful with this. I can't stop eating. Okay, so if you guys like this video, find the recipe link in my description as I stated before, and like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side.